Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning into the channel. Just some housekeeping. If you need studio design, consulting, or project management anywhere in the country, or construction services in the tri-state area, get in touch. The link is in the description below. We also launched our acoustical fabric. That's available now in the store. Not all of the colors are available, but they will be within maybe 2 weeks. We should have full stock on everything. So let's get into it. Today we're going to discuss acoustical fabric and studios. I just came back from a meeting with a potential client. I was a little confused about acoustic fabric as I was explaining it to him, so figured it was a good video to do today. If you've ever seen a professional or semi-professional recording studio, you'll notice the panels, the bass traps, the soffits. It's all fabric. And the reason we do that is behind that fabric is acoustical insulation, generally a rigid fiberboard. Now, the type of fabric you have to use is what's known as an IFR, which stands for inherently fire retardant. The reason that you have to use that is, and don't quote me on this, if you guys know better, comment below. I think it was in the 1950s, they had a string of theater fires. And essentially what was happening was they had all this fabric all over the theater. A small fire broke out and just spread like crazy and up through the fabric, and they were losing buildings. So at some point somebody put their foot down and said, okay, we got to come up with something, and that's where inherently fire retardant fabric came into play. So now in modern studio building, if you submit plans for a commercial build or a home build that you're having inspected, you generally have to submit your spec sheet for the fabric that you're going to use. They want to make sure it's an IFR fabric. With that being said, you also want to make sure the acoustical properties on it are correct, that it allows sound to pass through and hit that insulation. There really aren't a ton of options out there. It's not something you can go to Michael's or Fabric Barn and just buy and bring home. The stuff that you're going to get there, more often than not, if you put a flame to it, it's going to ignite. So for safety's concern, if you're doing a home studio project or you're doing your own kind of commercial renovation, you want to make sure you're using an IFR fabric. Super important. Safety is number one in all of our builds. That's the most important thing. So with that being said, there's maybe 2 or 3 different companies that we use. The one that we have up on the website is our standard 15-ounce acoustical fabric. I think it's got an NRC of 0.88. It's not super thin. It's not super thick. It's got a good stretch to it. And you want stretch to it because when you're doing larger sized panels, if you're doing a full wall fabric system, you want to make sure that it's strong enough that you can really crank on it to get any wrinkles or imperfections out of it. But at the same time, and I learned this early in my career, that the fabric doesn't tear at the corners. So it's a delicate game of finding the right fabrics, and believe me, we've tried them all. Because essentially a lot of times what you're doing is when you're building full panels, you're actually pulling it around the frame corners, and those corners can get caught on that fabric. And if the fabric isn't strong enough, it's going to just tear at that seam. So generally speaking, a solid like 12-ounce material would be the thinnest that I would recommend. 15 ounces is perfect. And then for really big installs, and it's more, you really got to know what you're doing, a 22 ounce is a real heavy duty fabric for these situations. And a lot of times when I'm doing a lighter color, like a white, and there's something behind it, I'll generally jump right to the 22 ounce, because most of the time, those 12s and 15s, if you're not careful and the lighting isn't correct, you can see shadows if there's framing behind it, if there's speaker stands behind it, if it's an in-wall softeted speaker. So generally speaking, we'll jump right to the 22, specifically with like a white. But that's pretty much the basis of the video, is just knowing which fabric you're using. If you're building something at home and you're running out to Fabric Barn and buying 10 yards or 15 yards to complete a project, and it's not IFR, and you're going to put it all over the studio, God forbid anything ever happens, you're going to have a massive problem. So it's really, for us as professionals, it's always safety first. So that's today's video. Like I said, any other questions, get in touch. Everything's down in the description below, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.